Keanu Reeves meets his ex-girlfriend at the airport with three boys identical to him when he asks. The bustling Los Angeles International Airport was a sea of chaos. Flashing cameras, eager fans clutching homemade signs, and harried security, guards attempting to maintain order, created a cacophony of sights and sounds. Amidst this mayhem, Keanu Reeves, disguised in a baseball cap and dark sunglasses, had just disembarked from his flight. He was returning from a grueling worldwide tour promoting his latest blockbuster, and all he wanted was to slip away unnoticed. Keanu weaved through the crowd, his head down, hoping to avoid recognition. He was exhausted, his body clock completely out of sync after weeks of travel. The thought of his quiet home and a long, uninterrupted sleep was all that kept him moving forward. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for him that day. As he neared the exit, something made him look up. Perhaps it was instinct, or maybe just chance, but in that moment his gaze locked with a pair of familiar eyes he hadn't seen in exactly 10 years. The world around him seemed to slow to a crawl as recognition dawned. Aurora Mitchell. She stood, there frozen, her hand clasped tightly around not one but three small hands. Keanu's eyes widened as he took in the sight of three identical boys, each about 9 years old, who looked like perfect miniature versions of himself as a child. His heart began to race, pounding so loudly in his ears that it drowned out the airport noise. His body went rigid, and the bustling crowd around him faded into insignificance. He stared at Aurora, then at the boys, then back at her. The reality before him seemed impossible, yet there it was, clear as day. With a mixture of confusion and disbelief, he took a tentative step forward. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse and trembling, barely above a whisper. Aurora, who are these children? Friends, if you're enjoying this story so far, we'd love for you to be part of our community. Take a moment to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more captivating stories with you. Now let's get back to Keanu's unexpected encounter. Aurora tightened her grip on the boy's hands, her eyes brimming with secrets and pain. The silence between them was palpable, heavy with unspoken words and years of separation. Finally, she responded, her tone unreadable. They're your sons, Keanu. The impact of those 4 words hit him like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of him. His world tilted on its axis, everything he thought he knew suddenly cast into doubt. He stumbled, back a step, steadying himself against a nearby pillar. My sons? He repeated, his voice barely audible. But how? When? Why didn't you tell me? Aurora's eyes darted around nervously, aware of the curious onlookers beginning to take notice of their exchange. This isn't the place, Keanu. We need to talk somewhere private. As if on cue, a flash went off nearby. A paparazzo, always on the hunt for celebrity news, had spotted them. Within seconds, more cameras appeared, and the whispers grew louder. It's Keanu Reeves. Who's that woman? Are those his kids? Panic flared in Keanu's chest. He had to protect them, all of them, from the media circus that was about to descend. Without thinking, he stepped forward, placing himself between Aurora and the boys and the growing crowd of onlookers. My car's outside, he said urgently. We need to leave now. Aurora hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Boys, she said softly, we're going to go with Mr. Reeves. Stay close to me. The 3 young boys looked up at Keanu with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. He felt a surge of emotion so strong it nearly brought him to his knees. These were his sons, his flesh and blood. How had he not known? Moving swiftly, Keanu guided them through the airport, his hand protectively on Aurora's back. His security team, sensing the situation, quickly formed a barrier around them. As they emerged into the bright California sunshine, more cameras flashed and shouts of "Keanu, Keanu" filled the air. They piled into the waiting SUV, Keanu's driver already at the wheel. As soon as the doors closed, he barked, "Go, just drive." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a swarm of paparazzi and confused fans. Inside the vehicle, an uncomfortable silence settled over them. Keanu's mind was reeling, struggling to process the monumental revelation. He looked at the boys, really looked at them for the first time. They were carbon copies of each other, with shaggy dark hair and soulful brown eyes that mirrored his own. One of them caught his gaze and offered a shy smile, revealing a dimple that Keanu recognized from his own childhood photos. "What are their names?" he asked softly, his voice thick with emotion. Aurora, who had been staring out the window, turned to face him. "Zephyr, Phoenix, and River," she said, pointing to each boy in turn. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. River. She had named one of them after his late best friend, River Phoenix. The gesture touched him deeply, reminding him of the connection they once shared. "They're beautiful," he murmured, unable to take his eyes off them. I can't believe I didn't know." Aurora's expression softened slightly. "I tried to tell you, Keanu, years ago, but..." She trailed off, glancing meaningfully at the boys. Keanu understood. This wasn't a conversation to have in front of the children. "We're going to my house," he said. "It's secure, and we can talk there." The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. The boys whispered among themselves, occasionally stealing glances at Keanu. He tried to smile reassuringly at them, but inside he was a maelstrom of emotions: joy, confusion, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss for the years he'd missed. As they pulled up to the gates of his Hollywood Hills home, Keanu felt a sense of unreality wash over him. Just hours ago, he had been a single man, focused on his career. Now he was a father of three, face to face with the woman he'd once loved and lost. The house was a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, offering breathtaking views of Los Angeles. As they entered, the boy's eyes widened in awe. "Wow," breathed Zephyr. "This place is huge." Despite the tension, Keanu couldn't help but smile. "Would you guys like a tour?" The boys looked to their mother, who nodded her approval. As Keanu led them through the house, pointing out interesting features and artwork, he felt a warmth spreading through his chest. These were his sons, and he was already falling in love with them. When they reached the game room, complete with a pool table, video game consoles, and a small basketball hoop, the boys could barely contain their excitement. "Can we play?" Phoenix asked eagerly. Keanu looked to Aurora, who nodded again. "Sure," he said. "Have fun. Your mom and I need to talk, but we'll be just down the hall if you need anything." As the boys hurried to explore their new playground, Keanu led Aurora to his study. He closed the door behind them, then turned to face her, his heart pounding. "Aurora," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Please, tell me everything." She sank into a leather armchair, suddenly looking very tired. "Where do I even start, Keanu?" "The beginning," he said, sitting across from her. "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" Aurora took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I tried. God, Keanu, I tried so hard, but by the time I found out, you were already gone. Off to Romania to film that movie, remember?" Keanu nodded. It had been a 6-month shoot, one that had effectively ended their relationship. He had returned to find Aurora gone. Her number changed, all ties severed. "I called your agent, your publicist, everyone I could think of," Aurora continued. "But they all gave me the same answer. You were unavailable, unreachable." "That's impossible," Keanu protested. "They would have told me if you'd tried to contact me." Aurora's laugh was bitter. "That's what I thought too, until I received the threat." Keanu leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Threat? What threat?" "A letter," Aurora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Unsigned, but clearly from someone powerful in the industry. It said if I ever tried to contact you again, if I ever went public with the pregnancy, they would make sure I lost everything. My career, my reputation, even custody of the children." Keanu felt a cold fury building inside him. "Who would do something like that, and why?" Aurora shook her head. "I don't know. The letter implied it was for your own good, that a family would ruin your image, your career, that you were on the verge of superstardom and couldn't be tied down." "That's ridiculous," Keanu spat. "I would have wanted to know. I would have been there for you, for them." "I know that now," Aurora said softly. "But at the time, I was young, scared and alone. I didn't know what to do, so I ran. I moved back to my hometown, had the boys, and tried to give them the best life I could. Keanu stood up, pacing the room as he tried to process this information. But why now? Why are you here? Aurora's eyes filled with tears. Because they started asking questions about their father, about why they look so much like the man on the movie posters. I couldn't lie to them anymore, Keanu. They deserved to know the truth. Keanu stopped pacing, turning to face her. And what is the truth, Aurora? Do you want me in their lives? She stood up, moving closer to him. I want them to have the chance to know their father. If that's what you want too. He looked into her eyes, seeing the same spark that had made him fall in love with her all those years ago. More than anything, he whispered. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted them. Zephyr poked his head in, his eyes wide with excitement. Mom, Dad, he said, testing out the new word. Can you come see? Phoenix just beat the high score on D. The racing game. Keanu's heart swelled at being called Dad for the first time. He looked at Aurora, who gave him an encouraging nod. We'll be right there, buddy, he said, smiling at his son. As they followed Zephyr back to the game room, Keanu's mind was racing. He had so many questions, so much lost time to make up for. But watching his sons laugh and play, seeing the joy on their faces, he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same again, and he couldn't be happier about it. As Keanu watched his newfound sons play, a bittersweet ache filled his chest. He'd missed so much. Their first words, first steps, first days of school. Birthdays, Christmases, skinned knees, and bedtime stories, all those precious moments he could never get back. But as Phoenix turned to him with a beaming smile, proudly, showing off his high score, Keanu vowed to make every moment count from now on. That's amazing, Phoenix, he exclaimed, high-fiving the boy. You must have some serious skills. Phoenix grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. I practice a lot. Mom says I have quick reflexes. Aurora chuckled softly. He certainly does. All three of them are naturals at sports and video games. Must be in the genes. Keanu felt a surge of pride, followed quickly by a pang of guilt. He should have been there to witness their talents developing, to encourage them, to cheer them. River, who had been quietly observing from the corner, suddenly spoke up. Do you like video games too? Dad? The word Dad still felt foreign, but it sent a warm thrill through Keanu's body. I do, he replied, smiling at his thoughtful son. I've even been in a few. Have you guys ever played Cyberpunk 2077? The boy's eyes widened in awe. You're in that game? Zephyr gasped. No way! Keanu laughed, feeling more at ease. Way. I play a character named Johnny Silverhand. Maybe we could play it together sometime if it's okay with your mom. Aurora nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. I think that would be fine, but not tonight. It's getting late and we should probably find a hotel. A hotel? Keanu frowned. Nonsense. You'll stay here. I have plenty of room. Aurora hesitated. Keanu, I don't think... Please, he interrupted gently. I've already missed so much. Let me at least give them a good night's sleep in a safe place. We can figure everything else out in the morning. After a moment's consideration, Aurora agreed. Keanu showed them to the guest rooms, making sure the boys were comfortable. As he tucked them in, an act that felt both foreign and incredibly right, he couldn't help but marvel at how quickly his life had changed. Once the boys were settled, Keanu and Aurora retreated to the kitchen. The tension between them was palpable as Keanu brewed a pot of coffee. They had so much to discuss, so many years to account for. I still can't believe this is real, Keanu murmured, handing Aurora a steaming mug. That I have 3 sons, that you've been raising them alone all this time. Aurora wrapped her hands around the mug, her eyes downcast. I'm sorry, Keanu. I know I should have tried harder to reach you. I was just so scared. Keanu leaned against the counter, his mind racing. I understand why you did what you did, but I can't help feeling angry, not at you, but at whoever threatened you, at the people who kept us apart. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. I keep thinking about all the moments I've missed. Their first words, first steps, teaching them to ride bikes, helping with homework. I can never get those years back. Aurora's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I know, and I'm so sorry. I Try to tell them about you, to keep your memory alive. They've watched your movies, you know. They're so proud to have you as their father." Keanu's heart clenched at her words. "Tell me about them," he said softly. "What are they like?" A fond smile spread across Aurora's face. "They're amazing, Keanu, so smart and kind. Zephyr is our little philosopher. He's always asking questions about the world, trying to understand how everything works. Phoenix is our daredevil. He'll try anything once, no matter how dangerous. And River, he's the sensitive one. An old soul, really. He feels things so deeply." As Aurora spoke, Keanu could see the love shining in her eyes. It was clear she had done an incredible job raising their sons. "You've done so well with them," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I just wish I could have been there to help." Aurora reached out, hesitantly placing her hand on his arm. "You're here now. That's what matters." Their eyes met, and for a moment Keanu felt a flicker of the old connection they once shared. But there were still so many unanswered questions, so much unresolved pain between them. "Aurora," he began, his tone serious, "we need to figure out who sent that threat, who kept us apart all these years. I can't just let that go." She nodded, her expression hardening. "I know, I've spent years wondering, trying to piece it together, but whoever it was, they were careful. The letter was typed, no return address. I tried hiring a private investigator once, but he couldn't find anything." Keanu's jaw clenched. "I have resources, connections in the industry. I'll find out who did this, I promise you." "And then what?" Aurora asked, a hint of fear in her voice. "Keanu, these people were powerful enough to keep us apart for a decade. What if they try to hurt the boys?" "I won't let that happen," Keanu said firmly. "I'll protect them, and you, no matter what. But we can't live in fear. Our sons deserve to know the truth, and they deserve to have both their parents in their lives." Aurora nodded slowly, a mixture of hope and apprehension in her eyes. "You're right. But we need to be careful. For their sake." As they talked into the night, piecing together the puzzle of their past and tentatively planning for the future, neither of them noticed the small figure listening from the hallway. River, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar house, had crept out of bed to find his mother. Now he stood silently, taking in every word of his parents' conversation. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the California sun streaming through the windows of Keanu's hillside home. The actor woke early, his mind still reeling from the events of the previous day. For a moment, he wondered if it had all been a dream. But as he made his way downstairs, the sound of childish laughter confirmed that his life had indeed changed forever. He found the boys in the kitchen, happily munching on cereal as Aurora prepared coffee. The domestic scene before him made his heart ache with longing for what could have been and hope for what still might be. "Good morning," he said, smiling as three identical pairs of eyes turned to him. "Morning, Dad," Zephyr chirped, milk dribbling down his chin. "Did you sleep well?" Aurora asked, handing him a steaming mug of coffee. Keanu nodded, taking a sip. "Better than I have in years, actually. How about you guys? Was everything comfortable?" The boys nodded enthusiastically, but Keanu noticed River's quiet demeanor. The sensitive boy seemed lost in thought, pushing his cereal around the bowl without eating. "Everything okay, River?" Keanu asked gently. River looked up, his brown eyes, so like Keanu's own, filled with a wisdom beyond his years. "I heard you and Mom talking last night," he said softly. Aurora and Keanu exchanged alarmed glances. "What did you hear, sweetie?" Aurora asked, moving to kneel beside her son. "About the bad people who kept you apart," River replied, "and how Dad's going to protect us now." Keanu felt a surge of protectiveness. He moved to River's other side, placing a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's right, buddy. I'm here now, and I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." River nodded solemnly. "I know you will, Dad. I've always known you were a good person. Even when I didn't know you were my dad, I could tell from your movies." Keanu felt his throat tighten with emotion. He pulled River into a hug, marveling at how right it felt to hold his son. Over the boy's head, he met Aurora's teary gaze. They shared a silent moment of understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together for the sake of their children. As the day progressed, Keanu found himself falling easily into the role of father. He took the boys on a tour of his property, showing them his motorcycle collection and teaching them how to skip stones in the pool. Aurora watched from the sidelines, a bittersweet smile on her face as she witnessed the bond forming between father and sons. But their idyllic day was shattered by a phone call. Keanu's agent, frantic and confused, informed him that the paparazzi photos from the airport had hit the internet. Speculation was running wild about the identity of the woman and children he'd been seen with. "We need to get ahead of this, Keanu," his agent insisted. "What do you want me to tell the press?" Keanu looked at Aurora, seeking her input. She nodded, understanding the unspoken question in his eyes. It was time to face the truth and the world. "Tell them the truth," Keanu said firmly. "Tell them I've just discovered I'm a father to 3 wonderful boys and that I'm overjoyed to have them in my life." As he hung up the phone, Keanu felt a weight lift from his shoulders. No more secrets, no more hiding. But he knew the real challenge was just beginning. Whoever had kept him from his family for all these years wouldn't be happy about this development. "What now?" Aurora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu squared his shoulders, a determined glint in his eye. "Now we fight. For our family, for the truth, and for all the time we've lost." As the sun began to set over Los Angeles, casting a golden glow over the hillside home, Keanu Reeves stood on his balcony, watching his sons play in the yard below. The sound of their laughter floated up to him, a melody he never knew he'd been missing all these years. Aurora joined him, leaning against the railing. "They're happy," she said softly. "Happier than I've seen them in a long time." Keanu nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I want to make up for lost time," he said. "I want to be the father they deserve." Aurora placed a hand on his arm, her touch sending a familiar warmth through him. "You already are, Keanu. The way you've embraced them, how quickly you've bonded, it's more than I ever dared hope for." As they stood there, watching the boys chase each other around the yard, Keanu felt a sense of peace wash over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, dealing with the media frenzy, uncovering the truth about who had kept them apart, navigating his new role as a father, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. As darkness fell, Keanu Reeves made a silent vow to the universe. He would protect this newfound family with everything he had. He would be the father his sons needed, the partner Aurora deserved, and he would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The story of Keanu Reeves, the action star and beloved internet icon, was about to take its most thrilling turn yet. But this time the stakes were higher than any movie role. This time he was fighting for the most important thing of all, his family. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity and emotion for Keanu and his newfound family. The media frenzy that followed his announcement was intense, with paparazzi camped outside his home and speculation running rampant in tabloids and gossip sites. But Keanu was determined to shield Aurora and the boys from the worst of it, focusing instead on building relationships with his sons and uncovering the truth about their separation. He hired a team of private investigators, sparing no expense in his quest for answers. As they dug deeper into the events of a decade ago, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. It seemed that someone with significant influence in Hollywood had orchestrated the separation, viewing Keanu's potential fatherhood as a threat to his rising star status. One sunny afternoon, as Keanu was teaching the boys how to play guitar in the living room, his phone rang. It was his lead investigator, and the news he delivered sent a chill down Keanu's spine. "We've traced the threat letter," the investigator said, his voice grim. "It leads back to Maxwell Thornton." Keanu's blood ran cold. Maxwell Thornton was one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood, a man known for his cutthroat tactics and iron-fisted control over his stars' images. He was also the producer of the very movie Keanu had been filming in Romania when Aurora discovered she was pregnant. "Are you sure?" Keanu asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Positive," the investigator confirmed. "We have evidence that he intercepted Aurora's attempts to contact you and orchestrated the threat to keep her quiet." As Keanu hung up the phone, He felt a mix of rage and disbelief coursing through him. How could someone be so callous, so manipulative, as to keep a father from his children? Aurora, sensing his distress, ushered the boys outside to play. "What is it?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "What did they find out?" Keanu took a deep breath, steeling himself. "It was Maxwell Thornton," he said, watching as shock and then anger flashed across Aurora's features. "He's the one who kept us apart." Aurora sank onto the couch, her face pale. "But why? What could he possibly gain from separating us?" "Control," Keanu said bitterly. "He thought a family would distract me, make me less marketable. He wanted to mold me into his perfect action star, with no attachments to hold me back." Tears welled in Aurora's eyes. "All those years, all the milestones you missed, because of one man's greed?" Keanu sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "I'm so sorry, Aurora. If I had known—" She squeezed his hand, cutting him off. "This isn't your fault, Keanu. We were both victims in this, but what do we do now?" Keanu's jaw set in determination. "We fight back. We expose him for what he's done. Not just for us, but for anyone else he might have hurt." As they formulated their plan, neither of them noticed River standing in the doorway, his young face set in a mix of confusion and resolve. The boy slipped away quietly, his mind racing with all he'd overheard. The next few days were tense as Keanu and his legal team prepared to confront Maxwell Thornton. They gathered evidence, prepared statements, and braced themselves for the battle ahead. Keanu was determined to see justice done, not just for his family, but for all the young actors who might have suffered under Thornton's manipulative tactics. On the morning of the confrontation, Keanu woke early, his stomach in knots. He found Aurora in the kitchen nursing a cup of coffee, her eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Thornton is powerful. He could ruin your career." Keanu took her hand, his gaze steady and determined. "Some things are more important than a career, Aurora. You and the boys. You're my priority now, always." As they prepared to leave, Zephyr and Phoenix clung to their parents, sensing the gravity of the situation, even if they didn't fully understand it. But River was nowhere to be found. "River?" Aurora called, panic rising in her voice. "River, where are you?" They searched the house and grounds, fear growing with each passing minute. It wasn't until Keanu checked his phone that he found answer a text message from an unknown number. "I have the boy. If you want to see him again, call off your attack on Thornton. You have 1 hour." Keanu felt the blood drain from his face. He showed the message to Aurora, whose knees buckled beneath her. Keanu caught her, holding her close as she sobbed. "This is all my fault," Keanu whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I should have known Thornton would fight back." But even as despair threatened to overwhelm them, Keanu's mind was racing. He couldn't give in to Thornton's demands. That would only embolden him further. But he also couldn't risk River's safety. In that moment, Keanu Reeves, action star, beloved icon, and now desperate father, knew he had to become the hero he'd so often portrayed on screen. With Aurora and the other boys safely ensconced at a friend's house, Keanu set out to save his son and bring down the man who had stolen so much from them. Using his connections and the skills he'd learned from years of stunt work and action roles, Keanu tracked River's phone to an abandoned studio lot. As he crept through the dusty, cavernous sound stages, his heart pounded in his chest. Every shadow could be a threat, every sound a potential danger to his son. Finally, he heard voices echoing from a distant corner of the lot. Peering around, a stack of old set pieces, he saw River, scared but unharmed, being guarded by 2 burly men. And there, pacing nervously, was Maxwell Thornton himself. Keanu's fists clenched at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to rush in, to attack the men who dared threaten his child. But he forced himself to stay calm, to think strategically. He couldn't risk River getting hurt in the crossfire. Taking a deep breath, Keanu stepped out, into the open. "Let him go, Thornton," he called, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "It's me you want." Thornton whirled around, his face a mask of surprise and anger. "Reeves, how did you find us? Did you really think you could take my son and get away with it?" Keanu's voice was low, dangerous. "It's over, Thornton. The police are on their way. Your career, your reputation, it's all finished." Thornton's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful bastard! I made you what you are. Without me, you'd be nothing." "You're wrong," Keanu said, taking a step closer. "You didn't make me. My experiences, my struggles, the people I've loved, they made me who I am. And now, being a father, that's making me better than I've ever been." As Thornton sputtered and raged, Keanu locked eyes with River. With a slight nod, he signaled his son. River, understanding instantly, stomped hard on his captor's foot and wriggled free, running towards his father. Keanu scooped River into his arms, holding him tight as sirens wailed in the distance. Thornton and his men, realizing the game was up, didn't even try to run. They stood defeated as police cars screeched into the lot. As the police led Thornton away in handcuffs, Keanu knelt down in front of River, checking him for injuries. "Are you okay, buddy? Did they hurt you?" River shook his head, his eyes wide. "I'm okay, Dad. I heard you and Mom talking about the bad man. I thought if I found him first, I could make him say sorry." Keanu felt a surge of pride and fear. "That was very brave, River, but also very dangerous. Promise me you'll never do anything like that again, okay?" River nodded solemnly. "I promise, Dad. Can we go home now?" Keanu hugged his son close, tears stinging his eyes. "Yeah, buddy. Let's go home." The aftermath of Thornton's arrest sent shockwaves through Hollywood. As the full extent of his manipulations came to light, other victims came forward, sharing stories of careers derailed and lives altered by Thornton's ruthless tactics. For Keanu, Aurora, and the boys, the following months were a time of healing and growth. They moved into a new home together, away from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. Keanu took a break from acting, focusing instead on being present for his family and making up for lost time. One evening, as the sun set over their backyard, Keanu watched his sons playing a game of tag. Aurora joined him on the porch, slipping her hand into his. "Who would have thought," she mused, "that after all these years we'd end up here?" Keanu squeezed her hand, a contented smile on his face. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes. As they stood there, watching their boys laugh and play, Keanu felt a sense of peace he'd never known before. He had faced down real life. Villains saved his son from genuine danger, and in the process discovered the greatest role of his life, being a father. The journey ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges to face, wounds still to heal. But as Keanu looked at his family, at the life he never knew he could have, he knew that every struggle had been worth it. In that moment, Keanu Reeves, actor, action star, and now devoted father, realized that he had finally found his true happily ever after. And it was better than any Hollywood ending he could have ever imagined. As the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, Keanu called out to his sons, "Hey guys, who's up for some ice cream?" The boys cheered, racing towards their parents. As they all headed inside, their laughter echoing through the warm evening air, Keanu knew that this moment, this family, this love, was the greatest adventure of his life. And it was only just beginning.